to you. Welcome to another edition of Monday Motions, where we look at ways that we can intentionally move into the week that we have ahead of us, to intentionally, deliberately live the lives that we've been given, rather than just go through the motions. So there's a fantastic Norwegian folk story I read a while back, and it goes something like this. There was a man that lived in Norway with his wife, and they just loved each other. Everything they did was great. They adored each other, and everything just went fantastic for them. Unlike many marriages, it was not the norm. Everyone knew that they were a happy couple, and they were relatively successful on their farm. They even had 2 cows, which for the time was a really big deal. And so one morning the wife looked at the husband and she said, we've got 2 cows. We should sell a cow and get some money. We deserve to have some spending money. We're hard workers and we don't need 2 cows. You should take it to the market. So he agreed, took the cow to the market that day. It was a long way from home, and so he had to travel quite a distance. When he finally got to the market and tried to sell his cow, he was disappointed to find out no one wanted his cow for whatever reason. Couldn't sell it, dropped the price, couldn't sell the cow. I guess the market that day was flooded with cattle, so he turned towards home with his cow. Along the way, he met a man coming towards him with a horse. And as the story goes, he traded the cow for a horse. He thought, hey, well, that's cool. We could use a horse more than the cow. Traveled a little farther, met a man coming towards him with a pig, a big old pig. And he thought, pig, that's kind of cool. Maybe I want a pig more than the horse. Traded his horse for a pig. Down the road, traded his pig for a goat. Down the road, traded his goat for a sheep. Then traded the sheep for a goose. Later on, traded the goose for a rooster. He found himself walking down the road with a rooster, and he was starving, and he had so far to go towards home, he felt like he was going to die. So he pulled a bit of an Esau, and he sold his rooster for spending money so he could buy food. He bought the food, and he ate it, and he had nothing left. He had gone from having a cow to having at least a full belly, but that was it. So right before he got home, he came up over a hill and he ran into the house of his friend and stopped to chat with him for a little bit. Told him the story of what happened, and his friend started laughing. He's like, man, when you get home, you're going to get it. And this gentleman said, no, I don't think so. I think my wife is going to think I did a good job. And his friend completely disagreed. And so the gentleman said, I have $100 at home. Would you be willing to wager $100 that you're right? Do you think my wife's gonna be super mad at me? I think she won't. And the guy said, you're on. They shook, and he followed him home. Kind of hid outside the house as the husband went in, and his wife greeted him. And, oh, it's so great to have you back. You able to sell the cow? He's like, no, I wasn't able to sell the cow. I was bringing it home, though, and I ran into a gentleman that had a horse. Traded the cow for a horse. Oh, you're so smart. That's exactly what I would have done. Now we can have a horse to take us into town. And, oh, but actually, I didn't keep the horse. I traded it for a pig. And he just goes on and on through all the animals. And the hilarious thing of the story is every single time he switches to another animal, his wife is just so excited. Oh, that's exactly what I would have done. How are you so smart? That's a perfect decision. He gets to the end and bought a rooster, or traded for a rooster. Oh, a rooster, well, that'll be great. That's fine. I actually traded that for some money because I was so hungry. I felt like I was going to die. And she's like, oh, well, that's okay. We didn't need any of that stuff anyway. She says, you're just such a great husband. I just don't know how you do everything so well. And the story goes, the gentleman opened the door, saw his friend out there and said, did I win the money yet? And the guy said, yep, you won the money. He handed it over. So at the end of the day, he ended up getting more than he would have ever gotten for his cow. It's kind of a funny story. It's pretty silly, but the reality that I think it reveals is very powerful. And as we're talking about roots in these few different Monday motions and kind of how we find our roots connected into different things, today I want to talk to you about relationships, how we find our roots connected in relationship with each other, whether that is a husband or a wife, or friendships, or work relationships, children, and all the different kinds of relationships that we find ourselves in. The Bible talks about love. And it says that love is all of these things. And 1 Corinthians 13 goes through a list of love is this, love is that, love is this. And the one that I think has caught my attention before, it says love believes all things. And I don't know about you, but I'm really uncomfortable being wrong. not just being wrong. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I myself am much more comfortable being wrong about being too cynical than being wrong about being too naive or too hopeful. I don't know if you resonate with that at all, but I think that some of you might. We're much more comfortable being too cynical and being proven wrong and saying, I was just doing my due diligence. I didn't want to be stupid. I wanted to make sure I was right. And we tend to let each other off the hook for that. Oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But what if we hope too much? What if we're on the other side of the spectrum where we say, I'm going to believe all things. I'm going to hope all things. I'm going to endure all things. I'm going to be like that kind of love that doesn't fail. It seems like we're setting up ourselves to be wrong. But if we stop for a second and think about it, we're wrong all of the time about being too cynical. We assume bad motives in people that aren't there. We assume offense when none is intended. We assume that there's been malfeasance in someone's actions when they didn't make a mistake. We misunderstood. And so we just kind of move on from that. We don't feel sheepish about that. But what if we assume someone was telling the truth? What if we assumed good motives? What if we assumed that there wasn't some malicious intent? What if we assumed the best, like the wife in this story, where she assumed her husband wasn't an idiot? She assumed he wasn't making terrible decisions. She assumed he wasn't just being foolish. And their relationship thrived. Don't get me wrong, there's a time to hold each other accountable. There's a time when we need to kind of push back on things and maybe be a little bit cynical. But the Bible says that true love believes all things. True love is not about being too cynical. True love is about maybe being too hopeful. To not be so worried about our ego and looking naive, but to say, I am going to believe the best. I am going to give someone that gift, the gift of positive assumptions. And if they prove me wrong, they prove me wrong. But I could have been wrong about being cynical. I'm wrong about that all the time. Why not shift over to the positive side of the equation and start assuming positive things? The Bible says that love covers a multitude of sins. One of the most powerful realities is that when we love each other, not only do we just forgive and cover sins in that way, but we love each other by assuming the best, by not holding people's feet to the fire for every little mistake they might make or mistake we maybe assume that they made. The Bible says that covers sins because love begats love. Love leads to love. The Bible says we love because God first loved us. When we put love out into our relationships, that love matters. It accomplishes things. There's an interesting thing about roots, and if you've been around trees very much, around sidewalks, you'll realize that roots go where the water is, don't they? They are going to burrow through cement. They will destroy foundations. Roots are powerful things because they are on a mission to find what they need. And we're not that different as humans, are we? We're all looking for love. We live off of love. The research and science continually brings back the reality that without love, our lives are shortened. Without love, children don't develop right. Without love, we're more at risk without love than we are if we're smoking and these kind of health issues. They're not good for you, but science has proven that love and connection are what really make us thrive. And without those, we set ourselves up for failure. And so we're looking for love, aren't we? We're putting our roots out. And my challenge for us today is that we would be a source of love for the people in our lives, that we would not hold people's feet to the fire for every mistake they make. We would not try to prop up our ego by being extra cynical to make sure we're not proven wrong, right? Why don't we put ourselves out there and risk? Because isn't that exactly what God does for us? And as Christians and followers of Jesus Christ, the God who put himself on a cross, not just to show his love, but to give his love, how much more can we put ourselves on a little cross, right? At times of allowing ourselves to be wrong, allowing ourselves to be hopeful, allowing ourselves to not hold people's feet to the fire for every little mistake they make. And when their roots reach out into our life, that they would find the nutrients that their roots are looking for, that they would find love. Ephesians 3 says some beautiful things about love and roots. It says that Paul challenges us. He says to us, his prayer is that we would be rooted and established in love, in the love of Jesus. And Jesus himself says that if we want to follow him, then we need to love like he loved, even if that sometimes means being wrong. So may we today live love to allow our lives to be a safe place for roots to reach into us. And may we find people in our lives that we can reach our roots into their lives and receive love. But most importantly, may we be rooted in our relationship with Jesus and be filled with the love and established and rooted in the love that he has for us. We're all going to be wrong about some things, aren't we? Why not be wrong about hope and joy and giving? Because isn't that exactly what